All right, greetings and welcome to another episode of the Sovereign Lounge. We are your hosts. I am Around the World Man with my co-host Yamin Fauzi here. Today, we actually want to cover some interesting topics related to some of these these associations. And these, there's trade associations, there's all sorts of pacts and treaties around the world. Today, we want to talk to you about the Compact of Free Association and how this can be actually a fascinating topic in regards to United States geopolitical sovereignty. So, Yamin, let's dive in. What do you have for us today on the Compact of Free Association?
Okay, so I think I'm going to start this with asking the questions on what is the Compact of Free Association. And I'm not sure how many people are aware of this situation, but it's kind of like a similar Schengen concept, but for certain Pacific Island states to the United States. So I fire up here a quick link here so that you guys can see it. One moment. So we have, this is actually something else that I want to show you then later on, because it's going to be very interesting. The Compact of Free Association is like a relationship of free associated sovereign states with the United States. So these are including the Federated States of Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, and Palau. And these citizens, they have been granted certain privileges that other nationals do not have. For example, they can freely visit the United States without needing to apply for they don't need a visa or a travel authorization like we have here in Europe mainly. They can use U.S. postal services and Medicare services as well. And in exchange, the United States has certain privileges of using their exclusive economic zone, regarding establishing of military bases. So it's like a two-way relationship. One of them gets privileges for the citizens, and the other one gets military access and geopolitical place at the end of it, which is very interesting because if you know about the Pacific region and the significance, especially after World War II, because the Compact of Free Association was developed during this time. Like the first associated state was Marshall Islands, then Micronesia, and then Palau. So here it says actually in the level of association, the United States provides defense, funding grants, and access to U.S. social services for citizens of these areas under the Compact of Free Association. And so I want to dive a little bit here into it because, as it says, they have Medicaid, military provisions. The COFA allows the United States to operate armed forces in compact areas and to demand land for operating bases, subject to negotiation, and includes militaries of other countries without U.S. permissions. So this is very significant. In World War II, Japan was a very was a threat to the United States, but these days it's more China's influence that is a threat to American interests. And there's some interesting place because the Compact of Free Association is a very unique concept worldwide. And it's a very smart one, to be honest, because it gives access to the United States to play their power play, essentially, and extend it to other regions. And their citizens get in return some sort of benefits of access to the United States, So this is regarding the
So
states.
so one of the things
in
that
Pacific,
that shows there is that they talk about economic provisions, military provisions, and so I want to ask you some questions that not to put you on the spot because you may or may not know these answers, but these are sovereign states here that are officially associated with the
Correct,
Marshall Islands, Micronesia and Palau. So they're issuing their own kind of travel documents and passports. And so what you're saying is that on the ground, or at the customs check when these people visit, say like a major U.S. International airport or something like that, they can just pass through freely. They're not subjected to additional documentation or extra screenings or stuff like that. Is that correct?
Correct. However, there is a small caveat, and that I want to show it to you as well, because it's a very interesting caveat. Back in the 90s, the Marshall Islands, they used to have their own citizenship by investment program. And, it says even in the text, when you look here, under the Compact of Free Association, citizens of Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Palau may enter, reside, study, and work in the United States indefinitely without a visa. These benefits are granted to citizens from birth or independence and to naturalized citizens who have resided in the respective country for at least 5 years, excluding acquired citizenship by investment. So it's very funny that the United States was like, okay, well, yeah, you can have all of these benefits, but we're not going to grant it to citizens, who have, acquired it by investment. So when Marshall Islands was selling their passports, all of the citizens now that have acquired it, they do not have these rights. I am not sure how it is enforced. I mean, one obvious thing would be just to look at the name. If you have, let's say, a very specific country name, maybe, I don't know, Russian, Arabic, or Chinese, or even Western European name, and you see a Marshall Island citizenship, then it raises some questions when you enter the United States of it. So, but I found it really interesting that the United States proactively was like, no, we're not gonna allow CBI
right.
citizens.
So that's an interesting thing of the enforcement, because how would they know? I mean, I would assume that most countries, when they're issuing their travel documents and passports, they don't say like on there like, hey, this guy, he paid some investment fee that we use to develop some projects in our country, or infrastructure or something else, real estate or whatever. So I can't imagine there's any sort of flagging on the actual travel document itself that indicates that somebody became a citizen through some either donation or investment. So it does seem like it'd be a challenging thing. Now, I wanted to ask you about some other topics, though, if you're ready to move on this Compact of Free Association. Is there anything else you wanted to cover on the initial overview, though?
Yeah, there's one thing I just wanted to show you guys as well, and just to grasp a little bit of the significance of all of this. I have shown, like here you can see a map of the Pacific exclusive economic zones, and here you can see this one is the Marshall Islands. So the exclusive economic area is like 1.7 million square kilometers, which is huge. And then there's the unfathomable exclusive economic zone from Micronesia, which is 2.9 million square kilometers. Just to give a perspective, you have seen this list before of countries, and I wanted to show you this right now. So the total landmass of Argentina is 2.7 million square kilometers. So the United States has a huge access to all of this combined, that's a significant portion. And so it's not to be understated. I just really wanted to show this to you.
Right. No, this is a great visual representation of what we're talking about, because, like I've said in previous episodes, the Pacific Ocean is a hemisphere of water, but it does have a number of sovereign nations and what I call semi-sovereign nations. And what you're saying here is that in some situations these are sovereign countries, but they have kind of either economic or military kind of protectionism in place. So in some ways, the United States, whether it's through military or business interests, does kind of have access to some of these big stretches of water or land in some situations. If I'm hearing you correctly.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, and I think this is a similar situation with like French Polynesia as well, because I believe French Polynesia is like an overseas department of France, and they how many, whether it's nautical miles or statute miles or kilometers, there's a situation there I believe where France has essentially or French interest, business or military, has a huge access to, whether it's maybe it's through fishing or anything. They have tremendous amount of square kilometers of water or otherwise that they're available to reach. So I wanted to ask you though.
Yeah, it's like 5 million.
Yeah, it's just absolutely massive. So I wanted to ask you though about some of these other places though that are maybe, well, depending on how you measure, not so far away from some of these compact of free association states. So one of the things that comes to mind is like Guam, American Samoa, maybe the Northern Mariana Islands. Can you comment on that at all?
Well, yeah, these are specific U.S. territories. But quickly before we get into this, regarding the Compact of Free Association, there's one thing why I brought up this topic, and it's very it's attached to very recent developments. So I have recently read a post here on X from a guy called Okay Then Me. I don't know his real name. We follow each other. We have written to each other, but he's a very smart guy. He does some geopolitical analysis,
right?
And so this guy, he says like, okay, well, he predicts that Greenland is becoming an independent country at some point, and when it does so, it may sign the Compact of Free Association with the United States. And this is regarding after the news that Trump wants to buy Greenland or anything like this. So they he points out that it's a very unique and brilliant American political structure, to leverage, to gain some more access to other territories. And Greenland is very important to the United States, and they not only under Trump, they have tried to get it incorporated as a U.S. territory, and so they might even try, the Greenlanders might try to become independent and then join this sort of Compact of Free Association, to bring it more into the influence of North American sphere. And I really like this, this post. It's actually quite some time that it has been published, but it would be interesting to see how it plays out then with in the foreseeing future.
Right. It, I'm not sure what the source is there. It looks like he's got like a screenshot of something. It kind of looks like a Guardian.com article or something, but I'm not sure if that's actually the source. Does he list his sources there?
Well, this is just, Greenland is seeking closer ties with US, particularly on mining. It doesn't necessarily mention the Compact of Free Association.
Right.
However, he implies that this might be a path for Greenland to consider, to be closer to the US without losing its sovereignty, without jeopardizing like the connection to mainland Europe with Denmark or with just in general with Europe.
Right.
So it would be a very, very smart play for Greenland.
Right. So just a reminder to all of our wonderful viewers, Greenland is, of course, heavily glaciated, but there's been a lot of rumors of, and in some cases confirmed situations when it comes to minerals in Greenland. And it is, of course, for a very, very long time been officially part of the Kingdom of Denmark. And so that's one of those things where several months ago, remember, the newly elected president Donald Trump was making a lot of stuff about Greenland, which reminds me of this serious dog sled patrol team, which is of course a very difficult unit to get into. But essentially the serious dog sled patrol team, the idea with that is it's one of the ways that Denmark can continue to claim sovereignty over the island of Greenland, because they have what they define as a military presence that's patrolling very remote stretches of Greenland on a regular basis, even sometimes throughout winter months. So it's very difficult to get into the serious dog sled team. But that being said, that's one of the methods that has been widely, I believe, recognized and accepted of how Denmark can continue their claim over Greenland. And I'm guessing that President Trump is informed on some of these things just like I am. And he says, well, a dog sled team, really? That's your claim to sovereignty? Or, or your how you're doing your claim on this island? So I think that's probably a lot of the things that are running through his mind, if I were to just guess. So yeah, that's a thanks for bringing it up. I see that this user on X.com that you've pulled up, he seems to be making a prediction there. It's kind of looks like a very anonymous account, but we'll see how that turns out in the future. Did you want to move back to the Pacific at all? Did you want to talk about Guam a little bit? Because Guam, I believe United States Coast Guard uses Guam as a stopover point, I believe, in some of their operations, or at least they have in years past. But yes, as far as Guam, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, I don't believe these territories are issuing their own passports, because they're kind of more actually part of, they're part of the actual United States in some ways, kind of more like we just talked about French Polynesia. So can you comment on these three as well, the Northern Marianas, the American Samoa, and Guam?
Okay, well, so yeah, these three territories of the U.S. have a very interesting status because they can govern their own immigration. So it's not like when you go to the United States and you have the regular CBP officer. Like especially American Samoa is different. American Samoans are also not considered U.S. citizens, but more U.S. nationals. So there's a very distinct difference between a U.S. national and a U.S. citizen. It goes very much into detail, but in short, they have certain U.S. citizens have certain rights which the U.S. nationals do not have. These are usually from territories that are under the control of the United States, such as American Samoa. I believe even American Indian are part, or Native Americans, are in their in their territories are U.S. nationals, but not U.S. citizens. This can come to governing their own immigration. Sometimes it can come to certain tax regimes as well. And so American nationals, they can travel freely within the United States, but again, it has some certain drawbacks and privileges, let's say like
right.
this.
So that brings me to a great question, because a lot of our viewers might not be informed about the Native American. Generally in English, the term you hear is called reservation. And this is like like what you would define as, well, as far as I understand, they're generally considered to be sovereign territories within the boundaries of, the 50 USA states. Now, there are some states that don't have any of these Native American reservations. Again, I apologize if that term has been thrown out now, and maybe they use some different terminology in the present day. I know a lot of these terms evolve over time. So please forgive me, our dear viewers, if I'm using some outdated term. But essentially, they're kind of like colonies or sovereign nations within the boundaries of the U.S. I know that historically, a lot of them are famous for having casinos, even in places where, in that, say, USA state, casinos are not allowed or not a thing. and they use these casinos a lot of times for funding. But I also know there's been some situations where these Native American reservations or colonies or nations, whatever you call them, they've even been able to work out things related to, say, automobiles and stuff like this, where, maybe there's something not allowed in a given state, but they can do it on their situation, on their territory, because they can define their own rules within their boundaries. And so
I quickly wanted to show, because their own boundaries, because I found a very interesting thing here. Let me just quickly pull it up here, regarding immigration in specifically in the Pacific region, just so you can see it here. So here's a summary of visa exemptions. There's the states, DC, Puerto Rico, which have all the same. Then there's the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, Northern Mariana, and American Samoa. So you see, these are usually quite similar, except here, like Bermuda, they need an actual visa to go to American Samoa. Right. And most of the Schengen and EFTA nations, they can go there as well. But here is a very interesting thing here, like for the Northern Mariana Islands and Guam. So citizens of Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Nauru, which is also citizenship by investment, they can apply for an ETA to visit the Guam and Northern Mariana Islands. So I find this very interesting, because usually they need a visa to enter the United States, but for this American territories, they don't. They can just have a travel authorization. Even Chinese nationals, they can visit the Northern Mariana Islands with simply just an ETA. And this is a very unique concept. I've just recently stumbled upon it. What this means, especially for people who want to apply for now citizenship. So they can get access to some of the U.S. territory without requiring a full U.S. visa. So, and also American Samoa has its own immigration, their own immigration rules. So they require a different path or different ETA from, let's say, from Schengen member states, passport holders or EU citizens, in order to enter the territory. So this is like one of these things that when you go a little bit down the rabbit hole, you notice what sort of privileges and rights you can have when you have a second citizenship, for example.
Right.
Even if it's just a part of a territory, especially with these large territories, the British, they also have a lot of overseas territories where they have different immigration rules than what they would have on the mainland. And I think it's very important to talk about these subjects at the Sovereign Lounge, so people understand that it's that getting a second citizenship or a residence is more than just having visa-free access to certain places that are obvious, but also having certain privileges, be it perception and also certain territories.
Absolutely, yeah. Even if it's that kind of perception of status or perception of value, there's a number of things there. And I wanted to ask a follow-up question related to, you called U.S. national. I wanted to ask you, as far as so there's a number of people, and I've spent some time with some of these people, worked with some of these people in the past. There's this concept of permanent residency. I think a lot of times they're called green card holders in the U.S. Are they considered, by your definition, a U.S. national? Somebody that's maybe been a permanent resident for 10 years or something like this, or where do they fit into this situation, or is that totally different than a U.S. national?
No, that's totally different than a U.S. national. Because a green card is just a foreigner who has the permanent residency status, and after a couple of years, he is eligible to acquire U.S. nationality / citizenship. So it's just really like a permanent residency, what we call in other countries. It gives you the right to enter. You can use the airport lanes of green card holders and US/US citizens, and also you can study, work indefinitely. But it's not like a U.S. national. That's still a different term,
Right.
because a permanent resident can still get deported. A green card holder can still get deported. He can still be expelled from the United States. However, a U.S. national cannot be deported. He will, because he is part of American society and the U.S.
Right, right. Okay, so that's an important distinction there, and I imagine there's something to do with voting as well. I imagine these compacted free association states, they're not participating in U.S. elections because they're sovereign nations. So it's kind of an interesting situation there. I got to say that I appreciate your detailed insights into this. Well, I mean, if you don't have anything else on this topic right now, I think we should probably sign off for now.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to you guys tuning into the next episode. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, this has been another fantastic episode of the Sovereign Lounge. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We are your co-hosts. I am Around the World Man with the fabulous Yamin Fauzi. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.